Shay Shay. Ni hao. Good afternoon, Pocket Gamer. My name is Kristina, and I'm the Mobile Business Development Manager for NetEase. So for those of you who don't know who NetEase is, don't worry, not a lot of people here in the West do, but hopefully we're going to be one of the biggest markets in the West soon as well. So before I get into my presentation, I have a funny little story about my first time in China. So I've been at NetEase for about a year, but about a month ago was my first time in China. I was there for 2 weeks, and I knew it was going to be somewhat of a culture shock, but it really was for sure. I went to Hangzhou, which is a small little town of 10 million people, and it was a crazy experience, but I have a point to this at the end. So one day, my colleagues, there's 12 people on our team or so, my colleagues said, you know what, we're gonna really immerse you in the culture today. This is what we're gonna, KTV, how does that sound? I'm like, oh no, it's karaoke. This is very scary. I told them in the West, you know, you do karaoke, you're probably drunk at a dive bar, and some frat boys are singing Sweet Caroline in the back. So they didn't understand, and they're like, it'll be fine. So we get out of the cab, and I swear it was Vegas. Huge place, you walk in, people are bowing at me, welcome, welcome. The loud music everywhere, and I'm like, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore, let's see how this goes. So we get into the room, the door closes, and the rest is history. I made it out alive, there was beer involved, but this is just to show that China is such a, you know, you never really know what it's like until you actually go there. And the same is true with games. You really need to have feet on the ground there to understand what it's like. Just something simple as karaoke really gets you immersed in the culture, and you have to go from there. So here we go. So a little bit about NetEase, since a lot of people don't really know what NetEase is. A little background, we are a very large Chinese publisher and developer of mobile games. We started in 1997, but we don't only do mobile games and PC games. We started out first as an internet technology company with an email service provider called 163.com. Has 800 million subscribers. I still can't fathom that. But so we also have advertising services, huge news portal. We'll get a lot of Chinese people get their news from. We have a music portal as well, and e-commerce site called Kaola. So we are very big, but games make up most of what we do. We also have a San Francisco office, which we just opened about a year and a half ago, and they're focused on bringing our internal titles from China to the West to really help our global presence and our brand. So, there we go. So this is what we do best, games, mobile and PC. So our flagship mobile title is called Fantasy Westward Journey, which is based off of an IP that we had called Journey to the West, which was one of our biggest, and still one of our biggest PC games. So that was ported over to mobile about a year and a half ago, and together with Westward Journey Online, the two have taken the top 2 spots on the iOS grossing charts since they were released a year and a half ago, and constantly they're up there. And usually we have 3 or so games up in the top 10, so we are very excited there. We also run all of Blizzard's titles in China. It's maybe how you know us, including Hearthstone on mobile. So that's a huge partnership for us. And definitely the latest Warcraft movie was bigger in China. So we also license IP into China, which is evident by our relationships with Kung Fu Panda and others. And I'm sure you heard about our relationship now with Minecraft. Very exciting. And we are a launch partner with Google Daydream to bring 2 VR titles to their platform. And there we go. So now to why we're all here. What is the state of the Chinese market, and how do Western developers and publishers break into it? So it's no secret that China is a huge market. It's one of the reasons why developers and publishers really want to break in, and obviously the lure of it is the huge population and the amount of users that companies can get. There's a huge influx of mobile games because smartphones have just taken over the market, and everybody from other platforms are starting to move over, especially the PC world. And where it was the dominant platform for a long time, we now are seeing that PC or mobile is moving up. So traditional PC gamers are migrating platforms, and I did not format this well enough. Yes, just basically shows that mobile games are starting to come up, and a lot of companies like ourselves most of what we're doing are mobile. So this is top games released in China, not top games or genres that are downloaded. So last year, we started to see a lot more RPGs and strategy and MMO games instead of, as casual is still very big in China, but right now this is big because of all the PC gamers that have started to move to mobile. So RPG is definitely the dominant platform or genre, and that's what we use some of our biggest games as well. So RPGs and MMOs usually have less players than casual games. Casual games have the biggest user base in China, but the money is starting to come from these games. So all the users have experience in hardcore PC. Mobile makes the most money. So yeah, and they also have a longer life cycle, and how a lot of Chinese gamers eat content just so much faster than here in the West. So you really have to be on top of that, constantly developing, and people stay in your game for a long time, therefore will spend money. So with the size of the market does come a lot of competition. That said, most of the revenue in the Chinese market is contained within the top 10 games produced by only a few major publishers and players. The market is still growing though, but the top 10 grossing games in the country take up more than half of the revenue. So it shows how difficult it is to get in and to sustain success. So most of the games on the app stores as well are from local players. So very few games have had traction that are non-Chinese games, but there are a few that have come in from the West, but if you look at the top charts, most of them are probably in Chinese and you don't know what they are, but that's just shows how crazy it is. So one big thing, here in the West we rely heavily on our relationships with Apple and Google, mainly because there's only two, Apple and Google, and those are already hard enough to maintain relationships with. But the same cannot be said about China. So of course there's the iOS App Store, Apple's there to help. There's also a ton of jailbroken devices and then app stores that go with that. But if you have a game on Android, don't be scared, but beware. There are literally hundreds of app stores, and they all run a different way. So you have to be prepared to go in, and you could pick and choose, but it's going to be hard. You might have to optimize your game for each one, and definitely your marketing channels for that. Google is also not allowed in China, so they're not there to help you, and without being a little handheld there, you might run the risk of being kicked off the app stores if you don't pay attention to what all these other stores' needs are. So that's a big thing to consider. Hundreds of app stores, but Android is still the dominant platform. iOS is moving up, not quite, or maybe up to 50-50 or so, but Android is very hard. So distribution will be expensive in China. Apple takes standard 30% cut around the world, but on Android they may take up to 30 or to 60%. I know it sounds crazy, but there's just so much competition, and they're hungry for content, so if they want you, but just beware. And when you use an Android distributor, in exchange for marketing and the promotion and all that they do, featuring, it could be a pretty difficult element to navigate, especially if you don't have somebody on the ground or if you don't speak Chinese. And I don't speak Chinese, so that would be tough. But however, if you have a partner, these cuts might be less. A lot of the bigger partners have their own marketing channels, distribution channels, and they could do it for you. So that is one thing to consider. We're going to circle back to that, but very expensive. So, and marketing is also very different in China. For example, they put up a billboard in a mall, 100 million people see it, and that's just how they market. So, depending on how you want to approach things, there are a few different options what you want to do. So, how do you want to do in the territory? Do you just want to throw up your game and just see how it does? You may already have success in the West, but the same then China might be the last frontier. Do you want to be top 100, 50, even 10? Or do you really want to compete head on with the local players? So here you have to decide what you want. But here are the key things to consider There's obviously more, but these are what we think are important. So you could be better. We're on the move. You could be better. Create something with all the elements a Chinese gamer would like. Seek in Chinese investment, start early, take your time, and get feet in the territory. It's really important to have somebody on your team that's there to really understand what users like, trends, and just to understand the market. And you're there to talk with all the distributors and marketing channels and everything. So you really, just understanding the gamer is very important. They are different than they are here in the West. For one, mobile consumption habits differ. People spend much more time in game, they play longer sessions, and at some point, people are playing for up to 6 hours a day in game. So you have to be aware of that and how your development cycle is. A lot of people take cabs in China, they're on buses, trains, they're commuting all the time, so having a mobile device is really important, and they're spending a lot of that time in game. Okay, you could be modest. You could commit to the territory, stick to your artistic vision, and throw the game up on the App Store, but don't really expect much of the market. You may just have global launch, success in some places, some geographies around the world, but you don't want to pour too many resources into China. And you definitely have to pay attention to China. Or you could be surprising. So bring something to China that nobody's ever seen before. It's definitely a lot easier said than done, but there are a few examples of when this worked, of west to east. So these are a couple examples. The art styles seen in Limbo and Monument Valley are not really something that a mass Chinese audience would usually go for, especially not as premium game. But the art and the gameplay is still so unique that they had relative success without having a major form of localization or culturalization. So that's really important that they were still very successful. So yeah, moving on. So these are things that you're going to need to have in your game if you want to really compete head-on with all the other players. You really have to pay attention, build the game. I wouldn't say if you build it from the ground up for the Chinese market, great, but if you already have one, these are the things you have to consider to change to go to China. So suitable art, it's the first thing that gamers look for in a game. It's going to be, you have to have the right art for the market, and it is sometimes very different than it is here. So couple of the examples of art styles in China are a cute, kind of stylized form of characters, maybe a 3:1 or 4:1 ratio body proportions. You see the big cute heads and all of that, and that's a suitable art style for any genre, really. You can see it in casual games and more hardcore games, for sure. And at NetEase, we have both. Or you could do more along the lines of the realistic art. This is more for hardcore games, MMOs, ARPGs, and suited for a more core audience, and definitely not something to have for casual games. It's just not going to work with those players. Even colors are important. So for example, red here in the West we think is an aggressive color. It's color of a stop sign, and we don't really put that too much out. But in China, it's a happy color. People use it for weddings, the color of their wedding dresses, events, holidays, and all of that. And on the flip side, white in China is used for funerals. So you really have to make sure you understand something as little as a color really makes sense. Lastly, removing sensitive culture differences, political, religious, any of these elements in your game really should be taken out, because they could be potentially banned by the government or just make some users uncomfortable, because that's not really why they're there to play games. Next, free to play. So free to play here, by download a game, it's free, you play for a little while, you delete it, maybe spend $1 or $2. China, it is the end all. Free to play is so important in China, and it's way more complex. Having in-game big, robust in-game economies. Everybody thinks of China as the pay-to-win place, and it really is pay-to-win. People spend more money on different things like VIP packs, upgrades, skins, different weapons, expensive weapons, just to be at the top of the leaderboards and make their friends be better than their friends. So they also have the patience to grind more, and then they'll spend to rise up to the top of the leaderboards. So social element of your game. This is absolutely vital to success in China, being social. So Chinese users get a lot of their news from Chinese media portals, and they're not really they don't really know what's popular in the West. So they may not know if we have a huge game that's going viral here, they would have no idea. So they're not going to download it because it's big here. So also social networks aren't just Facebook and Twitter, mostly because they're not allowed. So you're going to have to get understanding of WeChat, EasyChat, and Weibo instead. And they're all different. They have they're just very social, and you really have to get in to use them. Even having something as easy as a QR code for your game will help with the number of downloads that it gets. For just little things like that. So gamers also share a lot on social media. So they're going to share their gameplay, they're going to share their experiences with all their friends, and that's how people find new games to play, and that's super important. Word of mouth means something a lot different in China because there's so many more people, and your game could become a viral hit just from a EasyChat post. So, and virtual status and the art of showing off, also not something that's negative like it is here. So there needs to be a drive for players to really go in game and spend to be better than their friends. So lastly, the control schemes are a little different in China. Here we like to fight ourselves, really get into a game. It could have come from our love of console games, where in China they didn't really have that, button press and fight. But in China they prefer autoplay, easy controls, mostly because they're in and out of commuting and just around town and playing games at work and walking, and they prefer that and status building over dexterity, really. So that is a big thing to keep in mind. So it's not as easy as translating your text anymore. You've got to go in deeper than that. Design your game to fit the market. Themes like comics, classic novels, martial arts, those are all things that China has in games. There's over 300 games to the Three Kingdoms story as it is. So really have to find out what they like. Or you could use a new approach like esports, definitely social, maybe an IP that works in China. Hard to do both, like get an IP that works in China, but you never know, try it out. Or multi-screen, multi-device, things like that. Got to get into that. So getting your feet on the ground or a partner will really allow you to understand the pop culture trends, and which is important to an accurate localization, really. Also decide on which demographic you're targeting. Most of the users are aged 16 to 30 or so you really have to get into that, and how they play, how much content that they're consuming, and what is popular in the market right now. So this all comes down to one thing: find a partner. Find a partner, find a partner. Partner can help financially, but also with the legal aspects of China. They could advise on all the elements that I've talked about, from the art to the gameplay, how to make a really intense in-game economy, free to play, and all of that. Even just looking at the UI of Chinese games are very busy, but they consider that a challenge, and that's just what it is. Here, we like our games very simple. We don't want things hanging out on the sides in the UI, but differences are differences. So, and then large content providers such as NetEase and the big players, they know what is popular in China, and most of their games they could pump out really quickly and get more users. So, and the last thing, on an Android channel, sometimes games are ripped off or cloned, and having a partner could really help with all those issues. So this might be a little more necessary now there's been a change in some of the Chinese regulations around publishing and how Western developers and publishers work with Chinese companies. So it might really be necessary to have a partner now, because they'll know what'll be approved. We think that most games might have to go through a government audit process, but tomorrow, July 1st, we should hear more, and until then we'll be able to comment on really what it's like to get into China and bring a game there. So when you look for a partner, remember a few things. Remember, it is a partnership. Be flexible, commit to the territory, but start early so that you can really build your game for the region. You might need to make some big changes regarding art and everything, so it is partnership, and if you want to get there, you really have to commit to it. You can't just say, this is my game, this is how I'm going to keep it and go. You can, but you may not have the success that others do. So, thank you. That is it.